Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm John A. Torres, engagement editor with Florida Today, and we are here to talk election results. Yep, we finally made it. All these years, it feels like it's been a 4-year-long campaign in many races, and I am pleased to say that I'm joined by two experts in our local politics, two-time Brevard County Commissioner Kurt Smith. Welcome, Kurt.
Thank you.
And
pleasure to be here.
We have a Melbourne attorney and political insider, Kendall Moore. If you talk to anybody in politics, they know Kendall. He knows, he has his pulse on the beat of everything. Welcome, guys, and thank you. We're going to start talking about results shortly, but do you think we're going to see any huge surprises in Brevard County?
Well, surprises are always fun, but I would tend to doubt it.
Yeah.
I think if you gave me this information a month ago, I probably could have picked about where we are.
Yeah. And how about you, Kendall? What are you feeling about?
Same thing. I agree. We may see a few surprises at the city level, more likely than that, but less likely on some of the higher end races.
Yeah. Well, we had a pretty involved, ballot this time. There were lots of races, lots of state amendments, some county amendments. Do you think that the average voter really researched everything properly, or, what's your experience on this?
I think one of the things that we see from time to time that's really a challenge is there's what we call tiers of voters, people that have been paying attention, watching TV every day for the last 6 months, and others who made up their mind within the last 48 hours of voting, which means there's so much information to consume. And we were chatting earlier about the amendments. Even the printed versions themselves, much less the explanations, are extremely long.
Yes.
So it can be extremely tough if you waited until the last minute. And so sometimes the lack of voter information causes people to vote in ways that they really weren't certain.
Yeah, I actually had to reach out to two of our Tallahassee reporters to ask them for some input on those amendments. I am told we have some results coming in here, so let's see what we've got here. We've got, I hate the county commission, Kurt. Right here we have Katie Delaney is leading with about 62% of the vote, 63%, I think, over Brian Bobbitt and Nathan Slusher. We had all three here for a forum, and all three candidates all impressed me. For County Commission District 3, Kim Atkinson is at 58%, and Yvonne Minus is just cracking 40% there. And Thad Altman, with his name recognition, is almost at 58%, while Vinnie Taranto is at about 42.2%. Okay, this is a really important race. The School Board District 4, Matt Susan has the lead over Ava Taylor right now. He's at about 57%, or 59%, excuse me. The City of Melbourne mayor, it looks like Paul Alfrey is running away with it a bit. He's over 50%, and his two opponents, Hazel Buggs and Kathy Meehan, are each hovering around 20-ish. In Cocoa, we have Mayor Mike Blake, who's a longtime City of Cocoa politician. He's leading. He has about 61% over George Allen Cowart. And for the judicial race, though, this is a really close race. For the county judge, Group 6, we have Maggie Wagner is trailing Clarissa Harrell by a handful of votes. We've got about 51% for Clarissa and about 48% for Maggie right now. So we'll see. I'm not sure how many precincts have reported so far. For the state rep, District 30, Chase Tremont is at about 52%. He's the incumbent. And Kelly Smith is at about 34%. 34%. Got to get these eyes checked, sorry. For District 3 of the State House, we have Tyler Soroy. I don't think that's any big surprise there. He's probably expected to retain that seat. He's at 63% over Democrat Joanne Terry. Debbie Mayfield, who went from the state Senate, is now running for the State House. She is leading. She's at about 64% over Juan Himosa, a Democrat challenger. And for District 33 State House, we've got Monique Miller at about 55% and Vernon Mitchell Anderson at about 45%. Florida State Rep District 34, we've got incumbent Robert Brackett. Now, these results are Brevard County results, and some of these House races will bleed into other counties, and I believe that the Robert Brackett race is one of those. So he's got a lead of about 66% to about 34%. Florida State Senator Randy Fine has about 58% of the vote over Vance Ahrens, about 148,000 votes for Randy and 104 for Vance so far. And then we have, let's see, the Amendment 1 to make the school boards a partisan race. Now, it needs a 60% chance, vote in favor of, in order for this to become a passed amendment. Right now, the yes approval is only at 54%, and the no is at 45%. Now, again, this is just Brevard County, our results. Adult use of, the adult personal use of marijuana, we have about 54% in favor of here in Brevard, and 45 say nay. The abortion amendment, Amendment 4, we've got 55% in favor of the amendment and about 45% opposed to it so far in Brevard. And again, all these races are all statewide races, for these amendments. So this is just a sampling. We hope to have some results from the state later on in the show. Brevard County Amendment, Article 2, the salary. We were talking about this off camera. This would raise some of the, all the salaries for the county commissioners to pretty high levels, and that's failing right now. That's at about 47% yay and about 52% nay on that one, which I'm not surprised. Mike Karadopoulos, old name from the past, he was a former Florida House member and Florida Senate president, is now running for Congress in the seat of the retiring Bill Posey. He's at 61% over challenger Sandy Kennedy. I don't think that's any huge surprise right there. U.S. Senator Rick Scott in Brevard. Now, again, these are just Brevard County numbers. He has a 58% of the vote over Debbie Powell, who's at about 39.7. And we have the election that some of you may have heard of, the Trump-Harris race in Brevard right now. We have Trump and Vance leading with about 59% of the vote, which is not a big surprise. Okay, so let's...
John, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
We're reading these numbers. Do we know about what percentage of the electorate is represented on this?
I don't yet, but we may have that information soon. But again, all these are just Brevard County numbers. So, traditionally, our supervisor of elections has been great about putting out the results super early. I think when you actually ran one of your cards at like 7:22, it was over. You had won. So they're pretty good about getting that stuff out. But guys, what do you think about this race, District 1 for the county commission? We have Katie Delaney with a clear lead over Brian Bobbitt and also Nathan Slusher. Any surprises there or any input?
Well, I don't think there's any surprise there because typically in this county, if a Republican gets past the primary, they're pretty much a shoo-in.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, I'm not surprised. And she did very well in her primary. That was a surprise for many people.
Yeah.
Because she was up against some real names in the political world. She did her homework. She did a lot of knocking on doors. She made a lot of alliances. And that hard work is showing up in those votes.
Yeah, we had all three candidates here at Eastern Florida State College for a forum with an audience, and it was live streamed, Kendall, and I was impressed by all three candidates.
Right, they really spoke well in your interviews. They really knew the issues, as Kurt talked about. Katie surprised many people in the primary, beating a sitting mayor and other longtime elected official. And so she performed well there. It appeared that she had a very solid ground game as well that she appears to have continued throughout the general election. Brian Bobbitt, the Democrat, is the longtime executive at Keep Brevard Beautiful, so pretty well known on the north end of town. And we also talked about Nathan Slusher. He made it a very interesting race with some of the issues that he raised as a part of the process, but it appears that Katie has run away with it tonight with a pretty big margin.
Now, I want to ask you, Kurt, how hard will it be for Katie or whoever wins this race, we're not calling it yet, to try to make any sort of inroads on the county commission? Her interest will obviously be Titusville and the areas north, because that's because this is like Rita Pritchett's seat, I believe. Is it a pretty smooth transition for the newbies, or
it's really up to the newbie. Yeah. It's from the perspective of getting things done. You have to be a persuasive individual. You don't have to be a mathematician. You only have to be able to count to 3. You've got a 5-member board, and you have to get 3. So if she's good at math, and you don't have to be very good, she just has to understand that she can have great ideas, but unless she can communicate that to her fellow commissioners and get their buy-in, if she can do that, then she'll get a lot done. If she can't do that, she's going to probably get frustrated. So she'll either learn very quickly, or she's going to have problems.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know her well. I've talked to her several times. I know people that know her well. And I think she's proven by how well she's done in this race that she knows how to get her ideas across. So I would think that she'll probably do pretty well.
Okay, let's move on to District 3, where Kim Atkinson is winning over Yvonne Minus. 2 names that we've heard of a lot in the past here, Kendall, right? What does Yvonne, this isn't really that close, right? So it's like 58% to like 41. What was her downfall, or what has she got to do, perhaps next time if she runs again?
I think it's a name, as you said, well known, 2 terms on the Melbourne City Council and kind of a long-time community volunteer in the Melbourne area. Clearly, as Kurt talked about, there is a large differential in registrations and Republicans versus Democrats in this county. Did see the Democrats really hit the ground hard this time. Yvonne did compete with Kim as far as the fundraising is concerned, but clearly there seems to be a very strong and large Republican turnout. The south end of the county is a better place for Democrats with opportunities. Obviously, you look at the demographics of Palm Bay, South Melbourne, and the like, creates a better opportunity. But it appears tonight that Kim has done reasonably well with the 58% strong thus far.
And guys, either one of you can answer this. How much deal making is involved in trying to get a little support from the other commissioners, for something that you want to get done in your district? Is it a lot of, you support this and I'll support that, or?
Not openly, no.
No.
You learn early on that you have to understand your fellow commissioners, and you learn early on just by listening to them. It's all about listening. You have to listen to your fellow commissioners, and you learn what motivates them and what subjects are kind of ho-hum. And I can tell you from personal experience that you're not going to fall on your sword for something that's a ho-hum. That was always my perspective. I would think that there were some issues that would come up that I wasn't real crazy about, but I wound up supporting them because it wasn't in my best interest going forward to make a big deal about something that wasn't that important. Right. And in the meantime, I'm building up camaraderie with fellow commissioners so that hopefully they realize that, because again, if people don't know that, commissioners can't speak to each other other than when they're in public. They can't speak to each other about any of these issues. So you have to do everything in public.
Right.
And so you have to get a feel for your fellow commissioners, what your hot buttons are,
Correct.
what your hot buttons are, And if I know that you're really gung-ho on something, well, then I'm going to support that because I want you to support me when I'm gung-ho on something. These two ladies I know very, very well, both of them. I think Kim will do a great job. I think Yvonne would have done a good job. But again, Yvonne's a Democrat, and Democrats have a tall wall to climb in this county. And Kim, she was out there knocking on doors. She made a lot of alliances. She did a really good job, and it shows in the vote that she's got here.
That's a great segue, because I want to ask you, Kendall, I can't remember the last Democrat on like the county commission.
That would be Robin Fisher, who represented the North.
At least what, like 15 years ago?
He was on my first commission.
Okay.
So he was there for my first 2 years.
Yeah,
So that was 14. He was there from what, 8 to 16?
8 to 16, because Rita Pritchett has done 16 to 24.
Gotcha. So 8
So
years,
Robin Fisher was there from 8 to 16. If you recollect, showed very, very strong in his second race, but the very first race was hundreds of votes apart with Roger Shealy, who was a Scott Ellis candidate, if you recollect, back then when he originally ran in 2008. And so Robin Fisher, very strong economic development focused candidate. I think Rita Pritchett has continued that on the north end. That's North Brevard Economic Development Zone, and other items, will be very interesting to see if that's still the continued mindset coming from District 1 with a new commissioner.
Right.
I'd like to point out that Robin Fisher was a Democrat, but I realized early on that he and I had a lot in common because we were both businessmen, and Jim Barfield was also on that first board with me, and he also was a businessman. And I can tell you the business people, they have a different perspective. They look at the facts, and it's either a good idea or not a good idea. And Robin and I, we kind of got to the point where we realized that, local politics, there's no Democrat way or Republican way to fill a pothole. You're either going to do it or you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So you work together with people and you get things done. And I would say that is probably the biggest thing, and I don't think it should be hard, but I think it's the biggest thing for new commissioners to learn very quickly.
Yeah.
That you don't get anything done with just your ideas.
That's right.
You have to sell your ideas to the other commissioners.
All right, we're going to jump now to a third race for the county commission, and that is in District 5, which is my district. We have two names that are also pretty well known in the county. We have, like Thad Altman, who's been in the House and the Senate.
And the county commission.
And the county commission before that.
100 years ago, he was on the county commission.
And we've got Vinnie Taranto, a Democrat. He's at about 42% tonight, who's involved in lots of environmental stuff. He's everywhere you look.
That's right. That's right.
I did some volunteering at Green Gables, and he was there too. Yeah, he's everywhere. So two really nice guys. It looks like the Republicans will have a sweep of the county commission, which is not a big surprise. But what I was trying to get at earlier, Kendall, is it okay to have all Republicans on the county commission, or is it better, in your opinion, to have a little bit of a mix, so there's a little more give and take, perhaps?
Right. I mean, this county is made up of a diverse population of people, and I talk about that a lot. And when we talk presidential politics tonight, I'm going to make a guess that race and gender are going to factor heavily into the outcome of the presidential race. But not only those factors, but think about Brevard. North, Central, and South are different. Mainland, Barrier Island, and Beachside are different. You have varying thought processes, ideas, demographics, changing demographics. It does make sense to have a variety of perspectives. Clearly, one of the things that we've seen in the last year or two, and Kurt and I have talked about this before, Republicans have done very well statewide on voter registration, which has made it even more difficult in Brevard. I still think that the Democrats will continue to put forward solid candidates. I think it's been a great group of candidates this go around, particularly in the county races. And secondarily, it will be continued fundamentals. That's knocking on doors. We'll still have to continue to raise money at a level to be able to compete and communicate with our Republican peers as well. I will say this for all the Democrats: don't count us out. We're not going anywhere, and we'll continue to push. But tonight, clearly, the Republicans have been standing tall on the bulk of these partisan races.
I'd like to weigh in on that too, because I think it's important that we have a two-party system, because it keeps the Republicans, and I am one of those proud Republicans, but it keeps you on your game. It allows you to reach across the aisle, and Vinny Toronto is a good friend of mine. I served with him on the Citizens Oversight Committee for the Indian River Lagoon. Thad Altman, of course, I've known him for however long. And to your point, Vinny's active. I mean, he's everywhere.
Correct.
And he's very, very in tune with the environment in the county. He cares a lot. So I think it's important that we have an active Democrat Party in the county.
And I think, Vinny's a good example with, as you said, John, sustainability, lagoon, resilience, some of the things that he's really been fighting for. Kurt and I talked about that earlier. There's a large group of individuals and supporters. Look at how the lagoon has performed on the ballot before, and that's a place and space for him. I would suggest that this is unlikely to be the end of Vinny's political career.
Yeah.
I think we'll see that name again coming forward on future ballots.
I would agree.
Good point. Good point.
I want to jump now to the school board race, which has been pretty hot and heavy. We have two really good candidates that have been out there, canvassing, have been campaigning. We have Matt Susan, though it looks like he's going to win this. He's at almost 60% over Ava Taylor. Florida Today endorsed Ava. We were very, very impressed by her. And I hope that, in my opinion, I hope she stays in politics, because I think she can do some positive good.
Ava Taylor came out as a strong candidate. I've done work for the school board for many years, so know Matt very well. Also recollect that since the last election, there was a redistricting in the school board, and now those lines have been redrawn to parallel the county commission lines, which made that District 4 district even more conservative than it was last year. I think Ava Taylor was a very strong candidate. She came out of the parental ranks, not speaking out of turn. I think she's been pretty open with the fact of an issue that happened to her son in a hazing incident, kind of drove her as a part of that. It was a very interesting scenario for her as a 17-year, I think she's still active duty.
Yeah, 18
military,
years, yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. Was an interesting thing to watch her pitch kind of the honor God and country scenario, which are, some pretty conservative ideals that come across. And so I think she did show and see very, very well tonight, but clearly Matt has performed in 60-40. Matt had a very tough primary, right, with people wondering whether or not he could do the 50% in the primary. Ava did perform very well there, but tonight with the head-to-head shootout, Matt seems to have done it at 60-40.
Yeah, and it's pretty funny when we had them on for a forum over at Lake Florida Today. We didn't know that Ava was a Democrat,
right?
Because her answers were very, as you said, her country is first, God. And all that, which is what we typically hear from the Republican candidates. I just hope that the school board, stays out of the headlines.
Right.
I like when their work is done.
Right. And we'll probably talk about that, John, but this school board component goes back to what Kurt said about potholes. There are no politics in potholes, and there's no partisanship in potholes. And if you ask Kendall's opinion, I hope that the partisanship will stay out of our school board scenario as well. Our kids being divided from partisanship, I think, would be a good thing.
Yeah, Ava had a great answer for us when we asked her about a certain issue. She said, if elected, I can't rule with my heart or emotion. It's what the law says. I have to follow the law. So anyway, I want to move on to the Melbourne mayor race, if we can, where Paul Alfrey, the incumbent, he looks like he's gonna win again. He's at almost about 51%. Sorry, my eyes are going. And Hazel Buggs and Kathy Meehan are trailing with 23% and 25% respectively. Would this have been a closer race if Kathy Meehan or Hazel Buggs were not involved, in your opinion?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you see those votes and Paul has his niche, and the balance of that niche is represented by Hazel and Kathy. So had one or the two of those not been there, yeah, it would have been, well, the two of them together, it would be a real tight race. Assuming that all of those votes would stay with either one or the other, then it would be a very close race.
Right. You know, the third candidate, kind of, you talked about Nathan Slusher. If you remember, in some of the prior races, it was Eileen Davis. That third-party candidate or third candidate can certainly make a difference. Hazel did perform well the last time she ran. Again, tonight, equaling Kathy Meehan. I think the mayor's race was an interesting one. Kathy coming back, longtime mayor,
Right.
Longtime family business, downtown, returning to the political scene. The one thing I will say about Paul, Paul has been, and I say this in a positive way, an equal opportunity offender. He's upset some people on both sides of the aisle. He stood tall on these issues relative to the parades. He stood tall on this daily bread issue, on the homeless scenario, where you had some fairly large, intense, and powerful business interests in town pushing back. And in an interesting way, I said to him recently, he wasn't, left or right or Republican. He was Paul. He stood for what he thought was right, and tonight the voters have rewarded him with that, with 50% in a three-way race.
And that goes to my point about when you're in a position of decision-making, a mayor, a commissioner, from my perspective, you have a duty to represent the people and make decisions based on what's best for the people. And Paul does that. And that's why sometimes you have to praise him for doing exactly that. He doesn't put his finger up in the air and say, well, where am I on this issue?
Right.
Paul makes a decision whether it's right or wrong, and he goes with it.
Yeah. What impressed me about him, and I have known him now for about 5 or 6 years, but the last time he ran, he started this. His cell phone is on the website for the under the mayor's profile.
Right,
He's available 24/7. He says to anybody in Melbourne who wants to chat. So that was pretty impressed with him. All right, let's jump to the city of Cocoa mayor, where Mike Blake is the incumbent. He's running again. He's has a pretty clear lead. He's at maybe about 62%, 63% over George Allen Cowart. No big change here, or I should say a big surprise here. But, Cocoa has its challenges, and I feel like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but my view is that they're not advancing as fast as Melbourne is, per se, with the homeless, with the attracting businesses. Is that fair, or it's?
Well, I think we have such a diverse array in terms of the dynamics of the varying cities, right? North, South, Barrier Island, Beachside, and the like. The one thing you can say, Cocoa has made a strong push. I'm a bit partial to the scenario. I think it's a pretty public scenario that we represent Brightline, and they have fought very, very hard to try to bring a Brightline station here as a major economic development innovator. And so one of the things that I've appreciated from Mayor Blake, from their city manager, Stockton Whitten, and that entire council, is they fought all of the dynamics, the challenges, whether it be homelessness, affordable housing, and the like, while at the same time fighting the upper end economic development challenges, right? So they've got some issues that other cities don't have. This is Mike Blake coming back for his second and final mayoral term under their term limits scenario. Was thinking about that the other day. If you consider Mike and his father, I think there's been a Blake elected in either Rockledge or Cocoa since 1977.
Wow.
And so it would have been a tall order for someone to beat Mike Blake tonight. He is currently also serving as the president of the Florida League of Cities. And so for all of the 400 plus cities here in the state of Florida. So big win for Mike tonight and the Blake family at 62%.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine a League City Council meeting without Mike Blake. because he was on the council for 8 years, I think, prior.
Correct.
So
He's done both city council and mayor, right? Previously, and so I think he's committed. If you recollect, he did leave the council and run for a state house position.
That's right.
And then ultimately return to the council. So this will be his final opportunity to serve as the mayor for these final 4 years.
Well, Mike is not, he's an imposing figure, number one. And
But he played in the NFL, for crying out loud.
He's a fun guy to be around, and he's very, very vocal. And you made the distinction between Coco and Melbourne. I think Coco had a much taller ladder to climb.
Yeah, that's fair.
And they've done a terrific job to the point where they are right now. Do they have more to go? Yes, they do. But Mike's a good guy to lead the charge, and they're doing well.
All righty. Well, let's see if we can see some more results on the big board here. Chase Tremont is at 65% over Kelly Smith. That's not a big surprise, right, guys? I mean, for District House,
That's right.
For the State House.
Tough
What
to-
part of the
tough
county
to
is
beat
that?
an
Is that
incumbent.
Yes, it really is. What is the secret to actually doing that, Kendall? How do you beat an incumbent without a scandal?
There's the good and the bad of being an incumbent. The first thing, obviously, is name ID. If you're a county commissioner, you're on TV every week, you're visible, those variety of things. The challenge for the incumbent is you have a record. I remember, when Kurt was running, or you have others that are running, when you have a person running that is not elected, they can make all kinds of promises, and we somewhat joke about this. If you are elected, you tend to talk about two things, or three things. It needs to be legal. It needs to be something that you can rally other folks around, i.e. get 3 votes for, right? And if you can't do that, incumbents sometimes don't talk in those terms because they know it's not possible. Whereas a person who's not served sometimes talks about things that aren't either legal to do or that you could never politically accomplish. So it's an interesting dance as an incumbent to run, but visibility and name ID certainly go a long way.
Yeah. What is the big issue in your guys' opinion that you want our state legislators to bring up to Tallahassee? Is it the roads, the infrastructure in the county? Is it attracting more business somehow? Or any thoughts on
Well,
that?
attracting business is always on the forefront. We're big on that because business provides jobs, and jobs provide taxable income to the community, but it creates challenges too, because the more people you have, the more infrastructure you need. And roads aren't sexy. I'll throw that out as an example. In 2008, we had the downturn. I'm sure everybody remembers that. And because they're not sexy, the county commission was in a tough position because they had a lot less funding. And so what was the first thing to go? Well, roads aren't sexy, so they cut roads. You can't cut libraries, for example, because you'll have a whole crowd of pink shirts. I want my library. So you cut roads, nobody complains. Well, the problem was that when the economy started to come back, roads never did come back. And when I was chair, we went from 8 miles of roads to 57 miles of roads per year. We were supposed to be doing 50 miles of roads every year. So there was about a 9-year stretch there where we didn't do that. So you need the population growth, you need the taxes, but you also have to accommodate for that growth. And we've got a lot more people, we have a lot more houses, and we're not adding more roads. So that's just one example of the issue that you're bringing up that has to be addressed. You can't just ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody that I speak to, that I always hear about the roads and our lagoon,
Right.
obviously.
Right. Economic development, infrastructure, all of those, John. I'll take it from the opposite perspective, and I know this is close to Kurt's heart. We want the state to continue to work hard, do those things, but we're also interested in state government staying in its lane relative to home rule. We elect our local politicians at a city and a county level to make decisions that are closest to home. Quite often we have to remind clients, we have to remind others, there's a difference between Brevard and Broward. not good or bad, they're just different.
Right.
And so the one-size-fits-all approach doesn't always fit. And so we want to make sure that the legislature's doing the things that make this state better while still leaving those appropriate home rule decisions to the folks that are,
And
elected locally.
what I'm surprised at, Kendall, is that the GOP has always been a home rule, party, but in Florida lately, our legislature wants to, as you said, have the final say over everything from Airbnbs in your neighborhood to whatever else. Why the change?
They're clearly. Every level of government has to be careful about overreach, right? And when you have the opportunity to govern it or to preempt a body lower than you, sometimes it happens. And clearly, the concern for particularly the smaller counties is that if you look at South Florida, when Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach get together, that's a pretty strong force, and it can help to make laws statewide that may not be best for Central Florida or for Brevard or for even smaller counties in the Panhandle. So again, want the strong state government, but want to make sure that our home rule is protected. And something Kurt fought against during his days in the county commission, unfunded mandates. I send you the requirement without the money to go along with it, right? So we see quite a bit of that these days, sometimes coming from the legislature.
To your point, one of the problems you have, and you're right, Republicans like to think of themselves as independent thinkers, and people in counties should be able to decide for themselves. But government becomes big government when politicians get to the point where they think that they know best. And you get these guys and girls up in Tallahassee, they go up there with the great intentions, but then they get this idea, well, we have to tell these counties that they have to do this.
Right.
Well, just for one example, if you have a conservative idea, these guys up in Tallahassee want to impose that conservative idea on counties like you mentioned, the southeast counties. Well, that's silly, because at some point the worm is going to turn and you're going to have Democrats up there. And then what if they adopt the same idea and they start telling the conservative counties like us, well, we want you to do it like we want you to do it. That's where home rule comes in, and you really have to have home rule. And that was one of my fights with my fellow Republican representatives and senators up in Tallahassee, because come on, guys, you're Republicans and home rule works. Let's let home rule work.
Alrighty, we have some statewide results now that are in for Florida State Rep District 31. Tyler Soroy, he's at 64% just about, so it looks like he is reelected. As a journalist who works under deadline often, I rank, like politicians with, it's not the same way as the average Joe. I judge them first on who calls me back all the time. And I have to say that Tyler Soroy always calls back or texts back. He'll even text, I'm in the middle of a house meeting right now, I'll call you later, or something. So I appreciate that. I know he's been working very hard on the roads, on the, is it the John Rhodes expansion in Willagee, or am I wrong about that?
I'm not sure which particular one. I know that he has been a champion for some of the infrastructure scenarios here. Tyler started out as a person who wanted to make sure that he was in very close contact with the voters, and you see him around, and he makes himself accessible when he's not in Tallahassee, and as you said, even when he's there, he's happy to call back and touch bases, and I think that has continued to serve him very, very well.
Yeah.
His door is always open and his phone is always available.
Yeah. Well, that sort of reminds me, we aren't there yet, but like Mike Karadopoulos, when I first met him in 2001, when I started at Florida Today, he was in the Florida House. He was also teaching at, it was then BCC, which is now Eastern Florida. And I remember just having a small conversation with him, and a day later he had mailed me, like snail mail, like a note, like the 4-H club almost,
Right.
It was, awesome to meet with you and like chat with you. And I mean, that kind of stuff just it just kind of goes a long way. Anyway, with like journalists anyhow, but I'm sure that the people that vote for him also will have that same treatment. Florida State House District 32, I'm hoping we have some statewide results there. Debbie Mayfield, yep, she looks like she is going to win this seat. Now, she was in the House.
In the Senate.
In the Senate, and then the
House, Senate, and now
right.
she's back.
She's back on for the House,
That's
right?
correct.
Exactly. So this is Randy Fine's old, seat, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. And so I know that we heard some rumblings that she was hoping to get the sort of nod to try and pursue the Bill Posey empty seat on his retirement, but I don't know how true that is. I haven't spoken to her about it.
That's going to always be the Republican challenge in this county. The higher you go up the paradigm, the fewer seats that there are available. So there are fewer Senate seats than there are House seats, and the one congressional. So as we continue to move up that paradigm, there's not always space for everyone, and so it's either you're running for something else or you will compete against each other.
Now, are you allowed to keep switching the houses every 8 years? If like if you were in the like Florida House for 8 years, and you're out, and then the Senate, and then back to the House?
Correct. You've seen that with
Thad,
Senator,
right?
now Representative Mayfield, and as well with Representative, now County Commissioner Altman.
Wow, okay.
He started out as a commissioner back in, I believe, 92. And then he served there for 8 years, and then he was in the House for 8 years, and then he was in the Senate for 8 years, and then the House for 8 years. Now he's
It all comes full circle.
He's going to be a commissioner again. Professional.
Yeah, he is. It looks like he's winning tonight, so
Yeah. Professional candidate.
Yeah. No kidding. All righty, let's see. So we've got one other House race to talk about. We've got House District 33 coming up here. We've got Monique Miller, who is at like 55% over Vernon Mitchell Anderson. I don't know a lot about Monique. Do you guys know her at all?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, she's a terrific lady, very, very intelligent. She works, her background is cybersecurity, and I think that will serve us well. That's on the forefront of a lot of people's minds in government. And she's worked very hard to get that job. She knocked on an awful lot of doors and kissed a lot of babies and did all the stuff that you're supposed to do as a candidate. So well-deserved victory for her. Yeah.
Monique is certainly sharp, worked very, very hard for that, has been around the community for quite some time. Like I said about Vinny, I don't think this is the last we'll see for Vernon Anderson as well. Retired military, government contractor type in the aerospace industry, has worked very, very hard in the West Melbourne community, and I think that we will see that name, come back again, whether it's for this seat or for something else. Don't think it's the last one for him.
Yeah, and whose seat was this last time? Or is this a new sort of,
No,
redrawn?
It was, wasn't this Randy's seat?
I think this is Randy's.
this
The
is
other
Randy's.
one would have been Thad's.
Yes.
Oh, that's right, that's
Yeah,
right.
this one's
My
Randy's.
bad. Okay, so this is Randy Fine's old seat. Okay, let's see what else we have statewide. Okay, why don't we go to Amendment 1, which is one that, it looks like okay, we have slightly statewide results, so it looks like it's only at 54% or like 56%, which is not good enough right now. Obviously, all the results aren't in.
Yeah, we still have 66 other counties that get to weigh in on that.
Right. Well, we have some statewide results here, so this is.
Oh, this is
Yeah, this
statewide,
is like
okay.
some of the
Okay.
of the results coming back.
So yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to make it.
Which, I'm okay with this not passing. I'm not sure that we need to make school board races. I mean, we all know who's what and who's in what party, and they're already kind of partisan. But I think that it would open things up to have like that, to try to close primaries with, like ghost candidates, which I think is really dangerous when it comes to like schools and school boards. What do you guys think? Am I being overly sensitive with that, or?
I don't think so. I think, I'll use the phrase that Kurt used earlier. Potholes aren't partisan. And I think school board or children's issues fall into the same scenario. interesting dynamic. I've worked in Brevard County and for the school board, and for years, when you worked on one side of the street, it was hot and heavy, and the school board room and role was ultimately quiet. It has now almost flip-flopped that now the school board room is the center of cultural wars in America. I think taking it to a partisan election is one step too far in that scenario.
Yeah.
The issues are on the table. They can be heavily debated, but I don't think we want national, state, and local parties delving into kid-related issues.
Alrighty, thank you, Kendall.
That's according to Kendall. Steve may not agree.
I want to jump to Amendment 3, which is not known as the Cheech and Chong amendment. But so it looks like statewide, oh wow, it's only like about 56% yes so far, with about 5 million like votes, and 44% for no. I'm kind of surprised at this, and I wanted to bring this up and ask you guys what you thought. I mean, like all these commercials that we've seen, there was one in particular where they said we'll be having all this marijuana smoke in restaurants. Well, you can't smoke in restaurants
right.
anyway.
Right.
I mean, marijuana, cigarette, or hashish, or whatever you're smoking these days. I'm surprised that it's not going through. What about you guys?
I think there's two parts to it, John. One, and you brought this up earlier about campaigning, all ads are not meant to appropriately inform voters, right? It's somewhat of a misleading scenario, as you talked about with that. I thought the best ad in Amendment 3 was the ad that showed a quote from Harris and a quote from Trump, and then the moderator says, it doesn't matter which of these two you're voting for, they both agree and you should too, right? And so I thought it was an interesting dynamic to try to cut through the big elephant in the room of the presidential election, to try to bring in people from both sides. I did think it would perform better than 55% today as well.
Yeah.
It's been lots of money spent on this issue over the years.
I know some people that are going to be pretty disappointed to come Friday and Saturday night, but anyway.
I have to tell you, I'm frankly stunned, and I don't smoke marijuana. I don't smoke anything. Don't drink either, so I'm not the average person to look at for any of these subjects. But as a person in the community, I look at and I talk to an awful lot of people. And to your point, I'm really surprised in all the people that I've talked to, the general feeling was that this was easily going to pass.
Yeah.
More in the line of like 64, 65% or higher.
It was polling in the 70s at one time,
Wow.
right? And so I think Kurt's right on that one.
Yeah, I'm also kind of shocked because I know a lot of people, well, a few people that have the medical marijuana licenses. And what they say is that it's kind of a scam. You just go into the doctor and say, I'm depressed, can I get a medical marijuana license? As long as the check clears, you have the license. So, it's like we already have it pretty much. If
So
you
you're
want to
telling me it's a wink-wink kind of thing?
Yes, yes, it really is. And anyway, let's see, we can go to Amendment 4. Let's see, that's the abortion issue, and that is, okay, that looks like it's at 57%, is that what that says?
55.
55%.
No, you're right, 57.
Oh, no, it's at 57%, which is not good enough to pass if this holds up. And again, these are statewide results, but obviously there are some counties that haven't accounted yet. I know that the counties in the Panhandle area are open like an hour later.
Correct.
So they just kind of are closing soon or have like just closed. I mean, this one was kind of worded so wonky that I honestly, and I consider myself a pretty intelligent guy. I had to call our Tallahassee reporters and ask them, what's the deal with Amendment 4? And, if you vote yes, what happens? If you vote no, what happens? So if this, stays like this, that means that the new abortion laws that were passed a year or so ago will be intact here in Florida. And they're pretty strict, right, Kendall?
Very much so. And the dynamic, Kurt and I discussed this before, that I think factored into Amendment 4 is it wasn't just abortion. If you looked at the way that the Democrats talked about it nationally, it became a referendum on whether someone should tell a woman what to do with her body or not. And so I think that as we listen to some of the voters, they didn't get caught up in the Amendment 4 language. They were looking at a much broader issue. But, I agree with you that it was very confusing in its title, the way that it was structured, the way that it was written. And as Kurt referenced earlier, it dealt with a multitude of issues, whether that's, informed consent from a child or the process. There were a number of things that were all wrapped up there pretty tightly. One surprise for me to see Amendment 4 on the yes side outperform Amendment 3. 57 here, 55 there. Would have certainly predicted that to be the opposite. Right?
And, I want to stress, at like 57%, it still has a chance of like passing tonight. I mean, that's pretty close enough. I want to go to our congressional race here, if we can. Mike Haradopoulos, again, he was a House member. He was a Florida Senate president. Now he's running for Bill Posey's seat, and it looks like he's going to cruise to a victory here. He's at 63% of the vote. I don't think this is any big surprise. Mike, we ran articles at Florida Today on Mike years and years ago that he may have even had some presidential aspirations at some point. He's very likable. He's a very likable guy. What do you guys think about this race?
I'm not surprised. I think that Mike is he's a politician, and he's kind of been groomed for this job now for a long time.
Yeah, I would agree. Sandy Kennedy, a very sharp, board certified, I think in construction law, if I'm not mistaken, attorney. But I will say that in at least our generation of politics, Kurt, Mike Haradopoulos has been one of the most successful retail politicians, that we've seen in this era. You talked about it earlier, John. Mike is someone who's going to be ever present and stay in touch. Thousands of handwritten birthday cards and special this or that. We all chuckle about it. We all get it. But I can't mention the number of people that I've walked into someone's office and I see that little card sitting on their desk or on their credenza, right? And so it's been very, very effective. He's a very capable elected official, and our hope is that he will represent us very, very well. We've got so many pressing issues here on the Space Coast, and one of the things I think we may see with Mike, particularly depending on how the national elections turn out and leadership in the House, Mike could be a leader in that freshman class. And so we could see him somewhat, rocket into a leadership position, particularly based upon the fact that he's been, a Senate president in his prior days. So it'll be very interesting to watch.
I agree with Kendall. He's a fresh face. He's very energetic, charismatic, as you pointed out. I think he'll do well in Washington, D.C. He'll represent us well.
Now, you mentioned some issues that you'd like to see handled, by him or brought up to Washington. What are some of the issues in Brevard that should be brought up?
Well, there's a handful of them, John, that have some federal implications. We've seen a number of federal issues related to our port. Right? I mean, that's a huge economic driver for us. Whether it is cruise, whether it is now the impact of space and aerospace and how this port will be utilized, whether it's on the cargo side. You've got increased activity by the Navy with submarines, as well as with all of this commercial space, a greater need for where you're going to put the reusable rockets that are coming back. And so the increased need for financing and funding and other things on the port. Hey, look, I'll raise my hand and say I'm an advocate. On the transportation side, Brightline is something that is trains. Trains are heavily regulated on the federal side, Federal Railway Administration. That is something that if our local congressman was a big supporter of that, that would certainly help with everything from funding to the regulatory scheme and that. And so I think there's a number of infrastructure, transportation, and economic development things where a congressman that is super supportive of the Space Coast could make a huge difference here.
Yeah.
Well, and that makes him a go-to person, to your point.
Correct.
When he's sitting there in Congress, he'll be the go-to guy
Right.
that people are going to reach out to. That, listen, we hear this, we hear that. What are your thoughts? And so he's going to have a lot of input.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how he does. Now, if it's okay with you guys, I want to take a quick look at just the presidential race.
Yeah,
with
let's do it.
in the last few minutes that we have here. Now, this is Florida statewide results, which is a red state, right? So Trump has about around 56% here in the state. Harris Waltz at 43. What did Biden get in the state last time? Do you guys remember? Was it about 40%?
I have no idea.
It was in the 40s.
It was comparable to this,
and,
right?
And,
Yeah.
and it's been an interesting dynamic, and I think it was a challenge, John, for some of our local candidates. If you look at the focus, very different from on the Democratic side from the Barack Obama race. When Barack Obama ran, there were Barack Obama operatives everywhere on the ground here in Brevard. Florida was not competitive for the Democrats in the presidential race this go around. There was a focus in other places. When I was visiting other states that were part of the focus, there was ground game everywhere, not the same here. So the local candidates didn't have the benefit of either statewide and or national candidates bringing dollars, focus, and apparatus here locally. I think that certainly would have been helpful in that regard. So Florida is one that the mid 40s not being surprising for Harris in this regard. But as I joke with my good Republican colleagues, you may have done very well in Brevard tonight, but hold on, there may be some very big differences as we make our way to the end in this national presidential election.
Yeah, that's right. There's going to be some late nights, I think, in some newsrooms across the
I
country.
think we have a lot of hills and valleys to go through before we get to the end of this.
Yeah, yeah.
Days worth, likely.
I just hope, and I'm sure that you guys agree with me, that whatever happens with this race, that any transition of power is done peacefully, legally. We all love this country. We all want the best for this country, right? It doesn't matter if you're coming from the right or the left. You have the same goals, hopefully, ultimately, for the country. We're all on the same side.
I say, John, and Kurt's been a longtime friend. I think he shares this. The institution is always bigger than the individual, right? This is the United States of America, and regardless of who's running or who's winning, there are things for the sake of the broader institution that must continue, right? And so Kurt was a big pusher for that on the county perspective. Yes, he mentioned it earlier. You may have individual desires of what you'd like to see as an individual commissioner or individual city council member, but the institution itself, Brevard County, is going to be bigger than any single elected official. And so it's been a long, drawn-out battle, as you said. Can't believe it's coming to an end.
Yeah, and I just want to add this real quickly. I was just told that with only 8% in Pennsylvania, Harris has 71% of the vote of the 8% reporting in Pennsylvania, which is one of those, real battleground states.
I think it is the key.
Yeah.
It is the key, but you always have to be careful. 8% in Scranton is a lot different than 8% in Philadelphia.
Yes,
right?
that's
So
true.
not sure where it's coming from, but we are going to be watching those bellwethers, and it's very interesting. You've got 50 states, but we can count on one or two hands, what
Yes.
will make the difference tonight.
Yes. Well, guys, listen, I want to thank you for being here tonight, for offering your expertise and your knowledge and your experience. It has been awesome to chat with you guys. Again, I'm John A. Torres with Florida Today newspaper. We want to thank Eastern Florida State College, obviously, for also hosting us and having us here. And we hope that everybody who voted had a good experience, and we will see you shortly. Please check me out on floridatoday.com and at Florida Today newspaper. Thanks for watching so much. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.